Hello everyone, welcome back to the Laboratory of Mayhem. Today we're going to be looking at my latest custom action figure that I've done. It's possibly more of a kit bash, I guess halfway between a kit bash and a custom. But this goes back to one of the titles that I found when I was a kid learning all about Marvel Comics. So amongst all of the Avengers and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Hulk, there was a different kind of character out there. In fact, one of the categories that Marvel Comics had was the supernatural area. And first and foremost among these was Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was a very different kind of character. Even when you opened up the books, it didn't look like all of the other comic books. Most of the time it was drawn by a guy named Gene Colan, who focused a lot on shadows and a way of drawing that wasn't exactly easy to make out. It was kind of murky looking. You really had to look at the panels to see what was going on. And Doctor Strange had some of the coolest adventures with like demons and monsters and evil extra-dimensional things, and it was just really a fabulous comic book when you wanted something that was just a little bit different from your standard superhero fare. So I was very excited when they announced the Doctor Strange film was coming out. And I thought Benedict Cumberbatch, although I hadn't seen him in very much up until that point, seemed like a pretty good choice. And when the movie came out, I was pretty happy with it, although I was a little disturbed by several of the changes they made. And most people will probably think that my biggest complaint is going to be the recasting of some of the characters. And although that is a big one, the main problem that I had with it was that Doctor Strange took years and years and years of studying and training to become who would eventually be the master of the mystic arts, the Sorcerer Supreme. And in the movie, it looks like he did the Cliff Notes version and kind of just jumped to the head of his class. I like the comic book version a little bit better, where he was much more studied and patient and really learned his craft. When I got the Hot Toys action figure of Doctor Strange, I was really impressed with it. I mean, this is one of their best figures, I think. You can really see the likeness of Benedict Cumberbatch, the detail. And I thought in the movie they did an excellent job in conveying just something that looks like silk pajamas in the comic book into like a realistic looking and somewhat exotic costume. Now, then the other big problem that I had with the film was, of course, the recasting of the Ancient One. In the comic books that I read, the Ancient One was this old Tibetan master. The mystery surrounding him and the mystique. And so when I found out that they were changing the character from the old Tibetan man who literally looked ancient to Tilda Swinton, and great performance. I thought she did an excellent job in the film, but it wasn't the character that I expected to see. And that's fine if you're going to have that version, and I can watch the film. But for me, as I was putting up a toy shelf of a collection, I wanted something that is going to represent the comic book that I grew up with. So since Marvel and Hot Toys weren't going to create a proper Ancient One, I decided I needed to do that myself. So I went on eBay and I started searching through their vast catalog of unpainted heads. And I found this old Asian fella. I sculpted a beard onto him, and I decided to keep the similar outfit theme that was established in the films. I thought it did a great job at sort of making a realistic portrayal of these costumes. Let's see about switching my Chrome key here. Yep, that just makes him look gray. Okay. So this is a purple outfit. The Ancient One always wore purple. And I gave him some yellow underrobes, like that. And so I found some, I believe these were actually zombie hands, but they look kind of old, and there was sort of like, the position that looked like they would be casting a spell. So I thought, you know what, this should work out pretty well. And I gave him some like traditional Chinese boots along there. So now he looks like a proper ancient Tibetan monk who was the master of the mystic arts. Now, also within these pages, and back when I started collecting, Doctor Strange had already been in existence for well over a decade. And it wasn't that easy to get reprinted issues. We didn't have the internet or anything to go and track things down about where your heroes came from. Now, occasionally they would mention, like in passing, the origin stories of the various characters they would have. But Marvel also had this book called Origins of Marvel Comics. And one year for Christmas, my brother Ed and I were lucky enough to get a joint Christmas gift of the hardback version of Origins of Marvel Comics. I wish I knew what happened to that book. It's probably over in his collection somewhere. But anyway, we're first introduced to Doctor Strange, much like it was in the movie, if you haven't seen it, where he is a certain world-class neurosurgeon, and his hands are damaged in a terrible car accident, and he goes looking for a cure that will repair his ruined hands so that he can get back to his narcissistic and selfish lifestyle. So he goes to the Ancient One, and the Ancient One refuses to help him because basically he's very selfish, but he senses potential within him. He sees that, like, the person that he could be. So Doctor Strange stumbles across this plot by the Ancient One's student, Baron Mordo. Now, there was a Mordo in the MCU film. He just wasn't the Mordo from the comic books. Now, I love Chiwetel Ejiofor as an actor. He played such a fabulous villain in Serenity, which is the conclusion to one of my favorite TV series. But he's likable, he's charming, and Mordo is not. Mordo is sinister. Mordo is kind of sneaky and slimy. He just exudes that sinister nature of the classic villain. He even looks like the old time bad guy with the dark hair and the goatee. My apologies to anyone that fits that description that isn't necessarily a villain. So, since Hot Toys never went and made a Mordo figure, I figured, you know what? I'm going to make my own. So I went looking up different photo resources, and I took the original picture of Mordo, and I checked out some of the changes that have been made over the years, but they've always kept the general themes. Like, for example, he always dressed in green. He had some elements on there, and I decided to keep the same basic theme of, like, the layered robe look that was established in the films. Okay, now, here I'm definitely going to have to change the Chrome key here. There we go. So now you can see the Baron Mordo. I even made the little spikes on his cape that he always had, like that. So he's got the layered look. I got a pair of boots that were kind of similar to the ones Doctor Strange wears, and I made some wraps to go around them. The costume itself, like, he's got the little, it's almost like a vest that goes on him, again with the layered look, kind of taking a page out of Doctor Strange element. I'm probably going to do something else with this belt. It looks a little plain. I'm going to probably jazz it up a little bit with the same kind of themes that Doctor Strange has on his. But there he is. Now for the head, I was looking around for something that I could use, and I could sculpt my own, but it gets to be time consuming, and I have a lot of work lined up most of the time. So rather than do that, I decided to take a shortcut, and I was searching around on eBay, as I do a lot, and I found a Joaquin Phoenix Joker head. Now, similarly, what I did with the Ancient One figure, I sculpted a goatee on him. I'm noticing a theme here with sorcerers and goatees. Anyway, so I sculpted a goatee on him, gave him some black hair, and dressed him up. And I created my own comic book accurate Baron Mordo. So that's him. Now, what I would like people to take away from this is that just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean you can't make your own. The little creativity and the little potential that you can see within things, you'll be amazed at what you can do. There are robes and things you can find if you're looking for something like this that you could find on eBay. Do a simple search, or you may even want to hire somebody that can make these things for you. You can buy already painted heads or unpainted heads and try your hand at painting up on them. There's many tutorials that are on YouTube. There's a lot of things you can just pick up, like not necessarily every character needs to have a costume per se. But don't be discouraged. And so if something doesn't match up the way that you want it to be, remember, your shelf is your universe. And if it doesn't exist, create it or have it made for you. With the price of some of these figures, you could probably get a custom or a kit bash put together for probably about half or maybe 2/3 of the price of an actual Hot Toys figure. And it will go along great with the rest of your collection. So there's my Doctor Strange character arc. One official and two of my own. Thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, please leave them in the little section below. In the next few weeks, I plan on making a video that was requested by someone in the comment section about wanting to know how they go about making their own custom action figure. So I'm going to be looking at a custom figure that I've wanted in my own collection, and I'd made a version of earlier, but I think it needs a revamp, so I'm going to jump on that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hope to see you later.